In December 2004, a massive 9.1 magnitude earthquake ruptured the floor of the Indian Ocean. The resulting tsunami sent waves crashing across coastlines, leveling entire towns and pulling communities into the sea. In the aftermath, the Indian government dispatched military search helicopters out over the Bay of Bengal. They were looking for North Sentinel Island, a low-lying strip of land right in the storm's path. Officials fully expected the island's isolated population to have been wiped out by the tidal waves. Instead, as a helicopter hovered over the ruined beach, a lone survivor stepped out of the tree line. He raised his eyes to the aircraft, drew his bow, and fired an arrow directly at the sky. That archer belonged to the Sentinelese. They are an indigenous tribe of roughly 50 to 200 people, and they are one of the last entirely uncontacted groups on Earth, fiercely guarding a 23-square-mile patch of dense jungle. While modern civilizations were still cataloging the ruins, the Sentinelese had already returned to their forests. They had survived a disaster that killed 250,000 people across the region, and they did it while treating every potential rescuer as a mortal enemy. To understand how they got here, we have to look back roughly 60,000 years to the first migrations of modern humans out of Africa. Anthropologists believe the ancestors of the Sentinelese moved along the southern dispersal route, following a coastal path across the Arabian Peninsula and down along the edges of the Indian subcontinent. At the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago, melting glaciers caused global sea levels to rise. The warming waters swallowed the land bridges connecting the Andaman archipelago, physically locking the tribe on their newly formed island. Because they have been cut off for so long, their genetics are a direct line to the deep past. They carry mitochondrial DNA, known as the D haplogroup, and tests on related neighboring tribes show zero mixture with any other Asian populations. They simply never interbred with later waves of human migration. Today, North Sentinel Island functions as a living window into Paleolithic, pre-agricultural human society. Observers watching safely from a distance have recorded them thriving in the dense tropical forest. They travel through shallow reefs in narrow outrigger canoes, spear fish, and live in communal huts built along the white sand shores. They rely primarily on wood and stone tools, but they adapt whatever the ocean brings them. When a cargo ship named the Primrose ran aground on their reefs in 1981, the tribe stripped the wreckage, taking the iron and meticulously cold forging it to tip their arrows and spears. Because they can feed themselves, house themselves, and arm themselves using only the island's resources, they need absolutely nothing from the outside world. This total hunter-gatherer self-reliance gives them the physical ability to enforce their isolation, but that same isolation has created a severe biological blind spot. Having been separated from the rest of humanity for tens of thousands of years, their immune systems have never encountered modern pathogens. A common cold, a seasonal flu, or an outbreak of measles, illnesses the rest of the world brushes off, would act as a lethal plague. A single cough from an outsider could trigger an extinction-level event for the entire tribe. The danger became clear in 1880, when a British colonial officer named Maurice Vidal Portman led an armed expedition onto the island. Portman's men captured an elderly couple and 4 children, dragging them back to the colonial capital at Port Blair. The 2 older captives almost immediately fell sick and died. Panicked, the British quickly returned the children to the island with a pile of gifts, heavily risking the spread of that sickness right back to their families. When we look at neighboring Andamanese tribes who did accept contact in the 19th century, the results were devastating. Groups like the Great Andamanese, who once numbered in the thousands, were ravaged by introduced diseases, their populations collapsing down to just a few dozen survivors. So when the Sentinelese stand on the beach and fire arrows at boats, it is a trauma-informed defense mechanism. Their extreme hostility is a highly successful evolutionary adaptation required to avoid biological annihilation. This absolute boundary continues to be tested by outsiders today. In November 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chau paid local fishermen to illegally smuggle him out to the island. Chau bypassed Indian authorities, hoping to preach Christianity to the tribe. He approached their beach, but as soon as he attempted to make contact, the Sentinelese engaged him. He was killed by arrows, and his body was left on the sand. Following the incident, the Indian government made a significant legal decision. Recognizing the tribe's absolute sovereignty, authorities refused to charge anyone with murder, and they permanently called off any attempts to recover Chow's remains to avoid further confrontation. Today, the tribe's existence is backed by the force of the Indian Navy. Under the Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Act, the government enforces a strict 5 nautical mile exclusion zone around North Sentinel Island. This maritime blockade works in both directions. It keeps naive adventurers safe from the tribe's deadly arrows, and it physically shields the tribe from microscopic pathogens. The story of the Sentinelese is a reminder that human diversity often relies on physical boundaries. By holding their ground against the modern world, this small group has managed to keep a 60,000-year-old way of life alive and undisturbed.